And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Right, attention to roll call.
That's right, brother. Good morning. It's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We're headed for the weekend here. Tonight is the first game, World Series, New York and LA. So I'm out on the West Coast, man. I got a root for New York. So hopefully, hopefully I piss off a lot of people. I'm pretty good at doing that. Between this podcast and rooting for New York, a lot of people pissed off. So here I am on the West Coast. It's 5:05 in the morning. It's still dark outside. Good morning, everybody. Top of the morning. Nighthawk 13666. Jesse James, my brother. Paul Haggerty. A lot of good names here. Chris G. Cactus Joe 314. Joe Mango. Good morning, my brother. Unfiltered Fishing. Hassan. Imp Franco. Sleep. Good friends and listeners over here. Matt O'Brien. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny is white. That's the elephant in the room. He's a Marine, and he's white. John, let's get into it, brother.
Yeah, so jury selection started, jury selection finished. There was a huge debate about whether or not Daniel Penny's jurors should be anonymous or they should be identified to the public. The decision came down yesterday from the judge. The jurors will remain anonymous. I'm in favor of it. Normally, I believe in transparency, but it's a volatile case. I think if anybody was paying attention, if you saw Daniel Penny walk into the courtroom on his first day of jury selection, I mean, there were, everybody was out there. Hank Newsom was out there. Everyone's hurling death threats at him. And I think even with the jurors being held anonymous, I think there's going to be some fear of the jurors to find him not guilty. Like, they already have a fear before they hear the case, and I think it's a real fear, and it's a sad state of affairs in this country where we can't even civilly debate anymore.
As I said, talking about the elephant in the room, it's just a reality that we've seen cases similar to this Good Samaritan cases, and what's really focused around this case, unfortunately, is race. The fact that Daniel Penny was white, and he took action, and he was helping strap hangers and innocent bystanders and passengers on a subway in New York City, and unfortunately took the life of Jordan Neely. But of course, Daniel Penny is white, and we've seen a similar incident that happened, not even a similar incident, it was probably within about a month or two, that there was an incident on the train that involved, I think it was, the name was Jordan also, that someone lost their life, and there was actually mutual combatants in a fight where someone else took the life of another on a subway, but they were both black, and immediately there was no charges at all. They were dismissed, and we could see the difference. And unfortunately, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's when it comes to race, when it comes to this particular incident. And of course, there is no other way to have this than have the jurors anonymous, and even with that, this case could be tainted already. It's unfortunate we've come to this point in this country that we can't have a fair trial. We can't actually have due process. And unfortunately, the outside forces and outside sources impact heavily on this particular case. And I fear for Daniel Penny, honestly. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I fear for everyone in New York City. Your right to self-defense has been taken away. I said it 1,000 times. Alvin Bragg's motto for his office: one standard of justice for all. He should remove it. It should be one standard of justice for some, a different standard for others, or basically no standard. You can do whatever you want, depending on others. I think overall it was a good decision. Sherry says, shout out to Lady Liberty, New York Liberty. New York Liberty, the women's basketball team, won the championship. They had a ticker tape parade yesterday. It was nice they did that. The sport's still coming along. I know a few people that worked the parade. They said the numbers really weren't there. It wasn't like a Yankees parade. We haven't had a Knicks parade, I don't think, in my lifetime. So maybe we'll get that soon. Hopefully we get that. But it wasn't as big of a turnout. Women's basketball is still a growing sport. Hopefully we could get it to where it's almost as big. But even with all the hype and publicity around Caitlin Clark this year, basketball still lost $90 million, women's basketball. So I do think it's a sport. I think you'll see it come up further and further into the future. But yeah, so we already got one championship in New York. Definitely pulling for the Yankees to bring a second championship. And then, let's see what the Knicks do this year. Basketball season's coming right along as well. So let's see what happens. But yeah, I think Daniel Penny, I unfortunately think he's going to get found guilty. Like I said, I really think that even with keeping the jurors anonymous, I think there is a healthy fear of them that they have. What happens if we don't find him guilty? Without even hearing the facts, without even knowing the facts of the case, just knowing that. And again, I don't believe that anyone at this point doesn't know the facts of the case or isn't at least familiar with it or hasn't heard of it. It's been all over the media. So that's another thing. Is he really going to get a fair trial at this point? He's already been kind of convicted in the media, and he's been convicted by Bragg. So I don't know. I just don't see good things in Daniel Penny's future. I hope I'm wrong. Oh, what happened to Eric? We lost him, huh? All right, that was weird. I thought he was taking a little while. All right, let's go through the article while we wait for Eric to come back. All right, so judge reveals whether jurors deciding Daniel Penny's fate in New York City subway chokehold case will stay anonymous. Jurors weighing the fate of Daniel Penny in the subway chokehold death of Jordan Neely will remain anonymous, a Manhattan judge ruled Thursday, citing months of threats made to all parties in the high-profile case. Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Marcel Wiley said he'd grant the request by prosecutors to conceal the identities of 12 jurors who will hear evidence in the Penny's trial on charges of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. Assistant District Attorney Defana Yoran argued that keeping the names hidden would be best based upon prior threats that had been received in this case by all sides. The move to conceal the jurors' identities would help ease some of the tension in the highly publicized case and deliver a fairer outcome, she said. I believe that's wise, the judge said, of having an anonymous jury, and that he's been made aware of threats over the last several months. That's not just opinions, but very, very strong opinions, Weil said. There's been people who have not been afraid to make threats. Penny's attorney, Thomas Kniff, did not object to the prosecution's suggestion. Jury selection kicked off Monday, with possible panelists being pre-screened this week to make sure they would be able to sit for a full trial, which is expected to last about 6 weeks. The judge said he was hoping to have 90 potential jurors in court beginning Friday to begin specific questioning, which is expected to last into early next week. So, that's pretty interesting, Eric. I didn't know that. I thought that was an ask from the defense. It's actually an ask from the prosecutors.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, but it makes sense that the prosecutors would ask that in this case because I don't think they want any technical problems or technical issues where Daniel Penny will have an opportunity to have a mistrial or immediately have enough for an appeal to take this to a higher court. So obviously they want him to be found guilty, and no matter what, let's be honest with this, right? No matter what, that I gotta laugh, by the way. Tom put Eric had a good non-glitch streak. That has nothing to do with the stalling. I actually pressed the button by accident. I don't know what I did where I shut it down. But it's clear to me they want him to found guilty. The actual prosecutors in this case, and they want to make sure that it's thorough and there's no issues for potential appeal. This really raises a lot of questions. So at the height of the Daniel Penny case, John and I actually did a podcast with a friend of mine. His name is Sahi Shemesh. And he actually was trained by the founder of Krav Maga. He stems from Israel. He was in the IDF, Israeli Defense Force. And he's got a Krav Maga school in New York City called Krav Maga Experts. A couple locations throughout New York City. Really intelligent guy. This guy really understands self-defense, not just on the physical aspect, but the mental mindset that comes behind it. We really went to we really had a great discussion and went to extent of when do you get involved? When is it time to be a good Samaritan? How do you get involved? And I think this really sets the tone, not just for New York City, but for the country as far as just being good Samaritans, good men and good women. When do you step in to help people? And this case right here is the pinnacle case that is going to set the tone for the country. And it's sad we've gotten to this point where if Daniel Penny is found guilty, then it's going to be slim to none where we have a chance that someone is going to help a stranger in time of need. I mean, God forbid we have a woman who's getting attacked. We need good, strong men and women to stand up and help that person, to help someone who's a victim, who's in immediate, imminent danger of their life. But this case is going to set the tone. I mean, we're seeing it right now. People are scared to help other people. But this, I really think this is going to change the game for the entire country. And everyone should have their eyes on this right now. Everyone has to familiarize themselves with this case. Is it tragic? Absolutely, it's tragic. You don't want to take the life of someone else. It's scary. You know, the best fight, one, is the one you do not engage. But sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes you may have to help someone else, to help yourself, or to help your family. And unfortunately, I don't think it's anonymous no matter what. I think the jurors, the information, somehow people will find out.
So I think the other thing that like really bothers me, Al Tolliver 91 says, Al Tolliver or at Tolliver, whatever. In my experience on riding the train, when people have outbursts, New Yorkers usually ignore the person and they move on. This guy was an outsider and not aware of New York behavior. So maybe true, may not be true. I don't necessarily believe that he was a complete outsider. I don't think he grew up in the city. But the reason I'm saying that is because there were two other men helping Daniel Penny. And you can't see it because they cropped them out of this video, but you see, if you any of you are familiar with the video or any of the photos that came out, there were two other men on the subway that day assisting Daniel Penny. So, listen, I think it's a horrible thing that Jordan Neely died. I've said it on this station numerous times that, I have family members who were mentally ill. I have family members who became homeless on New York City streets and ran around the streets and in the subways and were crazed individuals such as Jordan Neely and had outbursts and things of that nature. So I don't think anybody should be murdered for that unless or potentially killed for that unless they're harming somebody else and there was a potential to harm someone else. And the people on the subway car that day obviously felt that Jordan Neely was a threat to them. I mean, I know there were women who said that Daniel Penny's a hero and he saved their life that day. They thought that Jordan Neely was going to kill them. And there were two other men on that train who stood up and physically restrain Jordan Neely. They also did not tell Daniel Penny when Jordan Neely went out of the picture or when they thought he went out of the picture, when he stopped fighting. They didn't say anything. I don't believe that this was a crime. I believe this falls under the self-defense doctrine. But if the prosecutor did believe this is a crime, if Alvin Bragg believes that this is a crime, the other two men acted in concert. Why are they remaining uncharged? Now, I'm not calling for people to be charged, but we can't look at a case and leave out facts of it. Oh, you know what? It was just Jordan Neely. He didn't, it was just Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely that day. It wasn't. There were four men. Three of them restrained one. One of them placed a chokehold that the other two assisted him in doing. So how are we leaving it based just upon that? Based just upon that alone? On that alone, this case has no merit, in my opinion. Because if it was a real case, if we were really looking at the incident, the other two men would be on trial as well because they acted in concert with Daniel Penny.
Busta Malaka brings up a great point. So Busta Malaka says, let me see if I can find it here, which I used to always talk about all the time. Article 35 allows you to use deadly physical force. So I will say this. I don't think that Daniel Penny was using deadly physical force in his mind. He was trying. I don't know what's in his mind, obviously, but I could, from his actions, right, the way he's plying a chokehold is not necessarily a properly trained chokehold. Even as a Marine, not all Marines are trained in proper chokeholds. Even cops, the same thing. Juju has shown a lot of defiance when it comes to chokeholds, and I think chokeholds are actually, it's really a gentle way to control another person if trained properly. It takes a lot of training. I mean, I'm a huge advocate. I trained jiu-jitsu many years myself, and there's thousands. I would say, I think it's about 300,000 people get choked out a year doing jiu-jitsu. About 1 million people a year train it. So about 300,000 people, and no one dies because it's trained properly. So it can be very effective. You could actually control another human being without using blunt trauma. It can be very gentle, but if applied inappropriately, it can lead to someone's death. But I think he was just trying to stop him and just control him. But Busta Malaka refers to Article 35, and Article 35 is what's very important. It protects police officers, it protects everyday citizens, it protects parents, it protects teachers, and then you do have a right to physically engage someone, not just wait till they attack him, because Juju keeps saying that Jordan Neely was not attacking someone. And Article 35 does give you the right to prevent someone from attacking someone else by physically engaging them, according to the New York State penal law. So, I mean, the question I think is very subjective. Is Jordan Neely, from many accounts, what we're getting is that he was threatening the passengers on the subway. And everyone's threshold for threats are quite different and very subjective. What Daniel Penny viewed as a threat that could have led to someone getting attacked. Are we going to wait till he pulls out a knife and starts stabbing someone? So when is it the right time to be a good Samaritan to step in? This is very subjective. Are we going to wait till he has a weapon in hand, or are we going to wait till he's actually on the attack? If we see all the observations, we've based our observations, we've made a baseline, and we can see that Jordan Neely is a threat, we take action. So I think this raises a lot of questions, and it's very subjective.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, a lot of people are commenting on here. When the body goes limp, you let off the choke. I agree. I don't think Daniel Penny in this situation had his full wits about him. I think he was scared. I think his adrenaline was flowing. I think anyone in this position, he's in a very vulnerable position. He's on a dirty New York City train with another man on top of him, with his back on the floor, and other people standing around. There's potential other threats elsewhere. He has two men helping him. And I don't think he had all of his wits about him because, like I said, when your adrenaline flows, your frontal lobe shuts down. So if any of you have been scared, or if any of you has been in a physical fight before, and you remember what that feeling like, your adrenaline starts to flow. Maybe your hands start to shake. Maybe they don't. But you basically get like this euphoric feeling, and time starts to slow down. You don't really know what's going on around you. You tunnel vision. You can't hear everything or see everything. You're solely focused on one thing. And I think that more than likely is what happened with Daniel Penny here. Is he's afraid. He's applying the chokehold to get him to stop. And again, there were two other men assisting him to get this individual to stop. So they all acted in concert on here. I do believe this self-defense applies here. You don't have to wait to be attacked, Juju, before you can utilize self-defense. You don't have to wait for someone to be injured before you utilize self-defense. If there is a man physically threatening a woman, you're able to defend her. We have laws on the books to protect you. Unfortunately, that is not playing into Alvin Bragg's mind. And the reason I say I believe that Daniel Penny will be convicted is because obviously we're starting off the case without all of the people that are involved in it. There are 2 people who are completely uninvolved in the incident that happened with Jordan Neely. So we're already starting out bad here. And I believe he's going to be convicted because what we've seen in Manhattan. You know, I didn't think there was any way that Juan Perez could get convicted. I didn't think there was any way Stephen Lee was going to go to jail for 9 months. I was like, it's impossible. There's no way. It's impossible. It's not happening. I didn't think any of these things were possible. I didn't think it was possible that Donald Trump could get convicted of numerous felonies for a journal entry that he didn't even make using a law from the 1800s that's never been used one time. I didn't think any of these things were possible the last year. So when I look at this case and I look how prolific it is, I say that, in my opinion, if I'm a betting man, I don't know if they have Vegas odds on here, but maybe it's something that they will look onto. If they had Vegas odds, I'm going to say those odds are in favor heavily of Daniel Penny will be convicted.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. I think all the cards are stacked against Daniel Penny, but we have to look at this case and be honest with it. The bottom line is the loss of life is tragic, right? And that's why I always say the best fight one is the one avoided, right? There's, I've been in situations plenty of times in restaurants or even incidents with cars where people cut me off and I don't engage them. Like, you know what? They give me the finger. I don't care. I've been in situations in restaurants and bars and people bump into you and they get mad. I'm like, hey brother, I'll buy you a drink. No problem. And laugh it off. Let that person feel they won for that day. I have no problem. And deep down, I know who I am. I'm confident. I know I can handle myself. And I feel in some ways like, you know what? I saved that person an ass kicking today. You know what? By having control of myself. But a lot of that comes down to self-defense, right? But I don't necessarily would say this is particularly a self-defense situation. This is more of, I think, of a Good Samaritan situation. Because Daniel Penny was, from what we know, just the information we have, I mean, hopefully we get more information with this trial, that Jordan Neely was perceived as an actual threat to the passengers on this particular subway. We have a young man who has military experience, so with a good mindset, where you learn skills to pay attention to detail, observational skills, but that doesn't necessarily translate to a chokehold. This is, to apply Brazilian jiu-jitsu or wrestling or grappling. That doesn't always equate. Not all Marines are trained to the point of proper chokeholds. There are different facets of, different Marines, different training. Same thing with the police department. Not all police officers are out there looking for guns. There's different facets of police work also. But I think this is more of a Good Samaritan case because in a self-defense situation, we have to show that there was no way to retreat, that you're pretty much cornered. I think that he was acting as a Good Samaritan. But really the question comes to now is, when can you take action? Do we actually have to wait for someone to actually attack someone else? If you perceive what may be an imminent attack and stop it before it happens? I mean, if Jordan Neely did not lose his life and not met his demise, would Daniel Penny be hailed as a hero? Would this have been a different situation? Is it really about the outcome? Is it tragic? Of course. But there is a lot of things that were missed before Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny met on this particular day. And unfortunately, their meeting led to the death of another. What about all the potential resources that could have been applied for Jordan Neely, suffering from mental psychosis? He's homeless. right now we have illegal military age males right now that are getting all the funding in the city when it comes to right to shelter. We see veterans, we see homeless in New York City that are not getting the proper care and not getting the funding that illegal military age males. Jordan Neely obviously wasn't getting the help that he needed. So if all these things were in place and Jordan Neely had gotten help, maybe these two would not have met on this particular day. Do I think that Daniel Penny said, I'm going to kill this guy? Absolutely not. Does anybody think that? Do I think that Daniel Penny thought that choke would lead to his death? Absolutely not. If a choke is applied properly, it can be very gentle. I've trained for years doing jiu-jitsu. I've went to sleep twice. I've been choked out myself in training and in competition, and I've went to sleep twice, and I was fine because it was properly applied and trained. But again, this is extremely tragic. But the question is, when are you a good Samaritan? When do you step in? When do you not step in? I mean, unfortunately, we saw a woman on a bus in the Bronx where a man is behind her, completely mentally deranged, exposes himself, is masturbating, and no one stopped him. No one at some point even alerted that woman that there's a man behind you. I mean, that's someone's wife, that's someone's sister, that's someone's mother. No one said, hey, there's a man who's standing behind you, exposing himself to you. Because of things like this, no one wants to be the next Daniel Penny.
Yeah, so listen, I think he was acting as a good Samaritan, and I think that's why, we can't really hold him to the training standards of a New York City police officer. But I do think this is a self-defense situation. It ultimately falls under the doctrine of self-defense. We have a woman who Daniel Penny was rumored to, and I'm sorry, Jordan Neely was rumored to have been screaming, "I'm going to kill you," which would leave that elderly woman to reasonably fear serious physical injury or death. It would also lead the other people on the train to fear serious physical injury or death is about to be utilized on that woman. I mean, I think any reasonable person could say if there is a full-sized man yelling at an elderly woman, "I'm going to kill you," and you don't fear that, you're not that smart. And I did make the comment, yes, a dirty New York City train, because I've ridden New York City trains the entirety of my life, and they are dirty and they are filthy and they're disgusting. And I never touch the handles and I don't touch anything on there. And if I hold on to the pole, I hold on with my arm or I lean with my arm. I don't use my hand, because if you actually did ride the train, Juju, you would know just how filthy and disgusting they are, how they're filled with piss, vomit, sometimes fecal matter, sometimes other bodily fluids, things of that nature, food, roaches, anything you could think of. So, yes, filthy, disgusting train. You're in a situation where you see a man yelling, "I'm going to kill you," at an elderly woman. Now, I think at that moment in time, you could reasonably fear serious physical injury or death is about to happen to another, possibly even yourself. I think any reasonable person who's on the train at that moment in time should feel that scenario. If they don't, because they have their ear pods in and they don't care because they want to go get their organic mango slushy from up the block, those people more than likely are transplants from New York and don't have a real grasp on reality of how very dangerous that situation is. So according to, and if that's the scenario, and if you agree with me there that somebody should reasonably fear serious physical injury or death against himself or another in that situation, when a grown man is screaming at an elderly woman, "I'm going to kill you," if you agree with me there, then according to the New York State penal law, he has the right to utilize deadly physical force. Now, I don't believe that Daniel Penny thought he was utilizing deadly physical force. I think he thought he was restraining this individual, which is another problem, because ultimately it did turn out to be deadly physical force. But I say he was more than justified. I say that, yes, he was acting as a good Samaritan, but ultimately, when you look at this, this is a case of self-defense. This is a case of a failure in public safety on the part of New York City mayor and on the New York City Police Department and on the MTA as a whole. When you look at these three organizations, time and time again, day in and day out, there are mentally ill people roaming around down in the train on New York City streets. The New York City Council, the New York State Senate, the New York State Assembly, the governor, the mayor, the New York City Police Department, the MTA have all done absolutely nothing to control this. And yet New York City taxpayers are spending over $2 billion a year to solve this problem. And yet every day when you enter that subway system, you are dealing with people just like Jordan Neely. And you have to roll the dice and say, is this person just crazy and not actually going to go through with his threats, or is he going to? But every day, you will probably fear serious physical injury or death multiple times while you're on that subway. Doesn't mean that people should just ignore it and people should just say, oh, you know what? No, it's all right because I deal with this all the time. Oh, okay. So I should deal with it's okay. It's okay to live in Chicago. It's in the south side of Chicago and hear gunshots and have gun bullets whiz past you, stray bullets whiz past you, because, happens here every day. It's fine. So it's normal. We should all live like that. It's crazy.
I think that this particular case has all the contributing factors for race propaganda and for propaganda for anti-police rhetoric. So, and the reason why I say that is because I do believe that if they were both black, if Daniel Penny was black and Jordan Neely was black, I think we would see a different outcome. And we see it. We see organizations like BLM. They don't advocate for black victims in the same manner when the perpetrator is black. We see black on black crime all the time. It's the reality, right? It has nothing to do with being racist. It's just the reality. But when there's a white perpetrator, an alleged perpetrator with a black victim, we see a complete different response because it's a sexy story. So I do believe there will be a different outcome. Also, I think that the fact that Daniel Penny is white, he's young, he was a Marine, and he's applying a chokehold, we can kind of correlate it and create an image of a nexus to policing, right? Because of the chokehold ban for the NYPD to utilize in a street physical encounter. So we can kind of correlate. And I think that people are trying to correlate this to police as well. The bottom line is Daniel Penny is not a New York City police officer. He's not trained as a New York City police officer in controlling subjects. He is a Marine. It's fantastic experience. It's fantastic training. But being a Marine is a complete different mission. The core mission is much different than a police officer. When it comes to being a police officer, it's about preserving life. And I think that Daniel Penny was trying to do his best in a good Samaritan self-defense situation. I think that John and I drew out both cases that are going on here. I believe you have a Good Samaritan case here, which you have Good Samaritan law, and you also have self-defense. You have a combination of both. They're not in a situation where they can retreat. They're on a subway car in New York City. It's not in a public street where they can retreat and leave that situation. They are there on that subway car, and it's happening in real time. And what's the best prediction of the future and the present is a reflection of the past. And in Jordan Neely's past, not knowing the Daniel Penny and the other subway passengers at this time, but Jordan Neely has been arrested for physically assaulting an elderly person prior to this. So their observations, and I say there because it was Daniel Penny and two others that were trying to have custody and control over Jordan Neely, made those observations, and those observations were correct and they were accurate because he was arrested in the past for it. So here's my question, really, for friends, listeners to the podcast, and John yourself. First of all, I hate the term of deadly physical force, non-lethal force, because does it really matter? If Daniel Penny decided to be a good Samaritan, or he was terrified himself and he's scared, and he decides to run full speed and football tackle, not even just pull a wrestling double leg, just a football tackle to get Jordan Neely down to the ground. And Jordan Neely, on his way down, his head hits one of the seats to the point where it cracks his head open and he bleeds to death. Or he just gets knocked out cold and he has some type of aneurysm, or God forbid, some type of concussion that leads to his death. Is there a different outcome here? Would it be different because he didn't apply a chokehold? Any type of force could end up deadly. Even if you just deploy a strike, someone could fall, they could hit their head on a curb, someone could die. Anytime we use any type of force, we hope someone doesn't die from it. We try to use minimal amount of force, but the reality is it could end up fatal. It could end up in a serious injury. So, John, that's really my question. Do you think if he applied a different type of force, do you think it would make a difference in the outcome?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, I agree with you. All of the terminology is virtue signaling. So I agree with you there. Any type of force is potentially deadly physical force, right? Whether it's a taser, whether I spray you with pepper spray, whether I punch you in the face, any type of force is deadly physical force. So, I mean, if we change the dynamic of the type of force he uses, does it change the dynamic of the situation? Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. I think when you look at what's humane versus what isn't humane, I think repeatedly punching someone in their face is viewed very horribly by people on New York City streets. Even some people who signed up to be police officers, they think that that's the worst thing that could happen in the world is someone starts to deploy strikes. So I think in today's society, it's more acceptable to do the type of move, the jujitsu type of move, to put someone in a chokehold. I think it's more acceptable on a jury pool. I think it's more acceptable for when the cops come if you are defending yourself. Because what were we trained in the academy, Eric? The winner of the fight gets arrested. You didn't have to start the fight. You could just be defending yourself. But if you're on a stand-up and you start punching people in the face, you're getting arrested that day. Here, he's trying to physically restrain the person. So will the dynamic change? Yeah, it will change. But I think what ultimately is going to change is the perception of people on New York City streets. It's going to have a ripple effect where we already see people just want to mind their own business. They don't want to get involved in anything. They don't want to do anything that's going to involve them, possibly. So they just stand by. And they'll just stand by and watch. They'll stand by and watch something like this occur. Potentially this old lady get punched in the face. Potentially this old lady get thrown onto the subway tracks. Potentially this lady gets stabbed. Potentially this lady get raped. And what it's called is, and our good friend Rico E-Man had sent it to me, it's called the Genovese effect, or called the bystander effect. So ultimately, I think that this case, what New York City officials, what Alvin Bragg is seeking to do is to help along and ensure that New York City residents no longer defend themselves. No one on New York City streets utilize Article 35. A lot of people bring up the bodega owner. The bodega owner who life was being threatened, and he winded up stabbing the person who was threatening. Jose Alba. Jose Alba was the bodega name. They bring him up. And Bragg dropped the case. Bragg only dropped the case after a large, huge national media outcry that this was self-defense. I think Jose Alba only got that outcry because his name's Jose Alba and he's a minority business owner. If Jose Alba was Daniel Penny, I don't think that same outcry comes. And I think that case goes through. And I think ultimately Jose Alba would have been convicted. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. There isn't one standard of justice for all. If Jose Alba was justified, Daniel Penny's justified. If Jose Alba isn't justified, Daniel Penny isn't justified. So he dropped that case. And yeah, so I do think that it would. I think anything. There's a million scenarios that could have happened, and possibly Jordan Neely could still be alive. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. So I don't know. And a lot of people saying he didn't have a gun, he didn't have a knife. Show me the weapon. I said it before. My uncle was about 5'11" to 6'6". He was about 250, all muscle. Now I know Jordan Neely wasn't that big, but I always think about what I would do if he was in some type of schizophrenic episode and I was a New York City police officer or a just passerby that day, if he was attacking me. And unfortunately, I would more than likely use deadly physical force against him because he was a very scary man. He was very strong and he could snap your head off. And I think that I would have been completely justified, or any police officer would be completely justified to utilize deadly physical force against him, because if you didn't reasonably fear serious physical injury or death in an encounter with somebody like that, you're not perceiving things too well. You should probably go move into the woods, and even then it's probably not too good.
So Tom said it's not justified for Jose Alba to take the life of his adversary that stabbed him. That he was only punching him. I actually, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to take a look at the case. And if anybody pulls up the article, let me know. I'm pretty sure that Jose Alba was stabbed himself by the perpetrator before he actually stabbed the perpetrator, which led to his death. I'm pretty sure, I remember the case well. Don't quote me on it. I got to take a look at it, but I'm pretty sure he was stabbed as well. But either way, I think that was a complete pinnacle clear case of self-defense. Yeah, I think this is, again, it's completely tragic when you take the life of another. And someone who boxed for many years, did all forms of martial arts, Krav Maga and Kali and some Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu and wrestling. When it comes to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they call it the gentle art because it's, let's be honest, it's not really gentle. A lot of it is brute force, grappling, putting opponents in submission holds. But it's the gentle art because putting someone in a choke can cause them to go to sleep within a couple of seconds, not cause any damage, not having to use any blunt trauma, but it has to be trained properly. But unfortunately, even with that, it doesn't matter. Any type of force can become deadly. And that's why I say, when is the time to step in? What if Daniel Penny did not step in? And what if Jordan Neely did attack that elderly woman? What if he did deploy a knife and started stabbing her, and then Daniel Penny stepped in? Would he now be a hero? Does that change everything? Do we have to wait till someone's actually under the attack? And again, we have to look at the case of Graham versus Connor, of what people are feeling in real time, not hindsight, not looking at something days later or in a controlled environment. We're talking about a subway car. What did people feel in real time? The fact is, to control another human being, even the size of Jordan Neely, which I'm looking at right now, he looks kind of malnourished. He's pretty thin. Even then, a lot of people on this, a lot of our friends here, our listeners, are active and retired cops, and we know we've had female adversaries that are small in stature, but with their emotional state, their heart, it's difficult to control. John, you and myself are pretty big guys, and we're trying to control Jordan Neely, as small as he is, as slender as he is. It's going to be difficult to control him without applying force that doesn't hurt him. That's why it's so difficult as a cop when you're trying to control someone else. And sometimes it could take up to 8 cops because you're trying to control someone without hurting them. So that's the disadvantage that a cop is at. And also with Daniel Penny, he himself is trying to control Jordan Neely, and he's being assisted by 2 others. And that's why, John, you brought up a great point. We always talk about that. Did Daniel Penny act alone, or did he act in concert with 2 others? And the bottom line is, there are 3 men here, 3 good Samaritans, who are trying to control another human being. It is one of the most difficult things to do. to control another human being. So if you're not a cop, if you're a friend and listener on this podcast, thank you so much. Think about if you have children, or listeners on this podcast. Think about if anyone has children, if you hold a 2-year-old baby, how hard it is to control them when sometimes they poke you in the eye by accident. Think how much that hurts when you get poked in the eye by a 2-year-old baby, and you're trying to control your baby, right? And when we try to control our kids, we don't crush them hard, trying to control them because, right, we don't want to grab their arm too hard because their arms easily come out of their sockets. So we try to control them without hurting them. So it's extremely difficult. It's very tough. And the bottom line is we do need good Samaritans. There is a time, because the police department cannot be everywhere at all times. And especially right now, the police officers are under attack themselves. We need good, strong men and women to step in and help others. But now I agree with you. Alvin Bragg has painted this environment that no one should step in. That is a society. That's a scary society to be a part of. It really is.
Yeah. So Hood Mayor says it here. You can't touch anyone as a private citizen. Security 101. So Security 101, that's because the company that you're working for as a security guard does not want to indemnify you and does not want lawsuits. They're not talking about the overall well-being of society as a whole. That's actually is a very scary society. And everyone's like, why didn't they call the police? Why weren't the police on the train? Why weren't the police at the stop? Why weren't they there for minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes? Right? Obviously, these men, and I say these men because it was 3 of them. Obviously, these men thought that there was an issue that they had to correct right away, and they didn't have time to call the police, or they would have, So I think, again, this is a huge failure in public safety. It's a huge failure when we're going to talk about the failure of the Evolve subway scanner. But before we do that, I just want to highlight what's going to happen here. I just want to bring this case up. I'm going to bring this to the stage. This is the murder of Kitty Genovese. This is in the early hours of March 13th, 1964. Kitty Genovese, a 28-year-old barber, was raped and stabbed outside the apartment building where she lived in Kew Gardens neighborhood of Queens, New York. 2 weeks after the murder, New York Times published an article erroneously claiming that 38 witnesses saw or heard the attack, and none of them called the police or came to aid. The incident prompted inquiries into what became known as the bystander effect, or the Genovese syndrome, and the murder became a staple of U.S. psychology for the psychology textbooks for the next 4 years. Now, I'm not going to go into this whole Wikipedia article, but that is what's happening here. Wikipedia is going to try to downplay this and say, oh, that didn't really happen. That's not what happened. People didn't stand around. That's what happened. That's what happens every day on New York City streets. That's what happens every day in the subway. People see horrible things. I saw a video the other day of a naked man on Manhattan streets chasing elderly women around the streets, chasing them with a stick in his hand. With an actual stick. He was going after women. He was butt naked. He didn't have shoes on. He didn't have pants on. He didn't have underwear on. He didn't have a shirt on. And everyone just stood there. No one did anything. Nobody did anything. You don't think that no men should step in at that point when there's a naked male running around the streets of New York City, chasing women with a stick, acting like he is going to hit them with it? We don't think anybody, you could never do that. You could never touch them. Again, failure in public safety. Again, failure on our elected officials to properly use the funds. Instead of giving crumbs to their buddies and to their donors, how about we look for effective solutions to spend New York City taxpayer money? How about that? How about we take the $2 billion a year that we spend that goes to absolutely nothing but help to bolster people's pockets? How about we take that $2 billion a year and we actually help people that are mentally ill on New York City streets and homeless on New York City streets? How about we take that money and we actually do that? And this is what is happening in New York City and this is what the Penny case represents, is that people just aren't going to get involved anymore. And is it going to be a better thing for New York City? Is it going to be Security 101, Hood Mayor? No, it's going to be. You ever look at videos of the 70s when they were all burned out buildings in New York City and nobody lived there and there were no jobs and there were crackheads everywhere and it was a very scary, dangerous place and there were fire barrels everywhere and there were prostitutes everywhere and there were open drug sales everywhere and there were people using drugs everywhere. That's what New York City is going to look like once again. I mean, it's starting to resemble it really well. These past 2 years, starting to resemble that a lot. We still have a lot of the economy still pretty strong here, so we haven't got the burned out building yet. But there's a lot of empty buildings in New York City, and it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before developers walk away from those buildings, stop paying the bills. They say, hey, you know what? I can't lease these buildings. I can't get the money. I'm just going to default on it. It's only a matter of time. This is what this is the society we're doing. This is what we're working on right now. Is we're turning New York City and all of our major cities into a hellscape. So I unfortunately think I applaud the decision to keep the jurors anonymous. And that came out from Bragg's office, which we learned here today. But I still think that he's going to be found guilty, not because the evidence even matters anymore.
So there's a lot of chat on this podcast right now. By the way, Christopher Dabrowski, thank you so much, brother. $4.99 to the podcast. Tom, $1.99 to the podcast. Thank you so much, brother. So there's a lot of chat on this podcast right now, including Juju, who's on job time right now, monitoring this podcast, talking about understanding New York City culture, which is very true. There is something to that. We'll say that, right? So, I've been all over the country and I've been all over the world, and I can tell you, New York City is its own animal. It's like there's no place like it, and we are very tolerable. And you do learn to have thick skin, and you learn to have a higher threshold than most people for, I would say, obtuse actions, just actions that are pretty wild, unlike other places. Now, with that being said, does that make it right at the same point? No, because everyone has a different threshold and tolerance for what they may feel in fear. It's extremely subjective. And again, New York City thrives on tourism. So it's not just New York City residents, and it's not just people that live outside New York City that travel to New York City for work that utilize that train. We have an extreme amount of tourism that utilizes the New York City subway. So New York City has to be a place for everyone, and everyone has a different threshold. Let's be honest, and everyone has different fears. Some people are scared of spiders. Some people are terrified. Some people are terrified of rats. Some people are terrified of being in public places. Everyone has a different threshold, and it's extremely subjective. And I think it's unfair to say whether Jordan Neely was a threat or not. We were not there. And according to the accounts that we have right now, he was making actual threats. So who is right to determine that, well, he doesn't mean he's actually going to kill someone. They don't know Jordan Neely. They see his actions. They see him imposing his will on an elderly woman, saying, I'm going to kill you. Why are we not going to take that as face value? We don't know him. We don't know his history. We don't know if, they don't know him on this train. So some people could say, well, if you grew up in New York City, you should be able to tell. Maybe, maybe not. So that's not always the case, but everyone has a different subjective point of view of what is an actual threat. When is the right time to step in? Do we have to wait till he actually takes action? That's scary. And I agree. John, we need good men and women. I mean, think, God forbid, you're driving down the street. Let's say you're driving down the street somewhere in New York City, and you're driving past some buildings, and you stop real short. There's an alleyway, and you stop. It's late at night, and you see a woman getting attacked, getting raped in an alley. Are you not going to get out of that car and try to help that woman? I would think that most men would stop that car and run out and want to help that woman, because we have wives, we have sisters, we have mothers, we have daughters, and we all have a soft spot when it comes to, even those violent perpetrators are in opposition to rape. I would think most of us would want to get out and help that woman. But is that okay because she's already in the act of being raped? What if she's in an alleyway and she's being cornered? And you could see that her life is in danger. Someone's trying to rape her. Maybe the guy's trying to grab at her shirt or trying to pull her pants down. Are we not going to help her? When is the right time? Do we have to wait till he's actually raping her? Again, we need good Samaritans. We need good men and women. It's community, it's culture to take care of each other, because the police department can't do it on their own, and they can't save everybody. It's just a reality, especially in the time right now with a diminished police department and the legislation that we have and the DA's office, the stakeholders, as Juju would like to say, the stakeholders that we have. Everyone has to take part and get involved, including community. And Daniel Penny was part of the community that day, whether he lives in New York City or not. He was on New York City subways. He was utilizing New York City resources. He was part of the community that day.
Yeah, and he was assisted by 2 other men. So and then someone died as a result of them assisting him in his actions. So then if it was criminal, they're all involved, and so were the people on New York City train that day that stood around and did nothing. No one said to Daniel Penny, get it. There was not one person on the train that said, get off him. He's done. There wasn't one person. The minute the guy hit his arm, he got off of the guy. That's it. Yeah, terrible tragedy, horrible situation. I think Juju needs to learn the culture in New York City. Getting chauffeured around in a brand new Dodge Durango that you smack up every couple of days and get it fixed, and going out to eat to fancy dinners using migrant credit cards, and walking around with a security team in New York City and cameras and your own social media team got you all gassed up thinking that New York City culture, because at one time you used to hide out in an apartment building in Queens playing video games while the rest of us were outside on New York City streets. And being completely sheltered during your entire police career didn't help you to actually learn the culture of New York City or understand things or be able to interact with people, which is why you remain socially awkward till today. Can't give a good interview, don't know how to interact with perps, with cops, with regular civilians, with reporters, with any of those things. So I think we do need people that understand New York City culture, and I agree with that. But I think that this case just is a highlight of the failure in public safety. Before we go on the Evolve scanners, we do have a Rumble channel. It's called At the Finest Cast. It's the finest unfiltered podcast, New York's finest retired unfiltered podcast. You could look it up any of those ways. If you guys are following us on YouTube or X, if you could go over there and and subscribe to us over there, highly appreciate it. Listen, YouTube is obviously our YouTube and X are our bigger accounts, as well as we have a meme pages and social media accounts on Instagram. But we are under heavy attack from New York City officials, the upper echelon of the NYPD, known criminals that they hang out with, as well as a fake journalist who I nicknamed Bootlicker News. They continue to make false allegations that we are infringing on copyrights and posting things that are copyright. And unfortunately, there's no real way for us to combat that from happening or stop them from doing this. So what they're doing is they're mass reporting all our accounts in an effort to shut down our social media and to shut down this podcast because they don't like the opinions that come from this podcast, because obviously they hold water. Obviously, a lot of people in New York City and amongst the rank and file of New York City Police Department feel the same way we do. So they're making frivolous claims in an attempt to shut this down and to impact us financially. So if you guys could just do us a favor, go over to Rumble. It'd be a lot harder for them to shut us down over there. We are creating right now another way, a free platform where we can't be shut down and we can't be removed for nonsensical false claims of copyright. So that's happening. We just got our Twitter account on X was locked last night. And it's just continuously happening every day, losing more and more features on X and on Instagram. It's just continuously happening, and there's really nothing we could do to combat it. So we're just asking if you guys could go over to our Rumble channel and share, because if we do get taken down on all these platforms, and more than likely it seems that that's exactly what's going to happen, then the only way we'd be able to contact you is through Rumble. So we're just asking if you guys could go over there. There's 569 people in the chat. Appreciate all of you for being here. If you could just do us a favor, like, subscribe, share the space out, we appreciate it. But this was again last night. The Finest Unfiltered podcast's X account was shut down. I know my personal accounts have been reported numerous times. Eric's accounts have been reported numerous times. And it's all because of things that they don't want out there. We talk a lot about opinion, but we also point out a lot of things as well that are wrong in New York City. So, we appreciate all you guys for staying with us. And for all you haters, especially you ones with big accounts that make a lot of money on X and on Instagram. You have 125,000 followers. Maybe you have 250,000 followers. And you little sneak rats who continue to make up frivolous claims and lies. We will find out who is mass reporting, what the IP addresses are. We will drop a lawsuit on you. But those same people shouldn't throw stones from a glass house, because listen, this is how you guys eat as well. So if you're going to hurt us, I mean, it would sadden me to see you guys get taken down as well. It would sadden me that all the people that support us started reporting you guys as well. And I don't want to see that happen. So I suggest you guys stop that. I'm not looking to get into another lawsuit, but I mean, we will. Again, this is a media company. It's actually a few media companies, as well as Eric and myself as individuals who you are harming by lying. And this is something coming in through the Adams administration by the upper echelon of the NYPD, notably John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, and their cheerleader, Viral News New York City, also known as Oren Levy, who appears to be a paid propagandist by them, or for whatever. He's either working for clout, and it's no wonder to me that he gets leaked body camera footage from Kaz Daughtry. He gets carte blanche. He gets tipped off about all the crimes that are happening by Kaz Daughtry. It's no wonder to me. So all he's got to do is be a little bully, be a little sneak rat, and make up lies and just continuously mass report us, because he has no life. He's a loser. He lives with his mom in an apartment building, and he's a bum, which is why we don't sue him. But he just recently started making a lot of money on X and Instagram with his false reporting of the actual migrant crisis and the cheerleading of the public corruption that's going on in New York City under the Adams administration. So, yeah, he's continuously mass reporting us. Well, I think that he is continuously mass reporting us. It's more than likely him, along with people who are being paid in New York City, who sworn police officers and civilians that are just sitting there mass reporting every single post we put out. Like I said, I could put out a post of a kitten and it'll get demonetized immediately. I'll be told that I violated immunity policies and that this is copyrighted, and it's all false.
Jesse James, thanks, brother. $4.99 to the podcast. Put a smiley face. John is on a roll this morning. Absolutely. First of all, we're not going anywhere. We're not going away. And Eric, thank you so much. 99 cents to the podcast. We're not going anywhere. I can tell you right now. The beauty of living by RV, because I'm traveling, I enjoy it very much. If John and I get shut down on Twitter, if we get shut down on YouTube, if we get shut down on every possible podcast, and we could if I can't even use my phone and we can't podcast, I could just drive my RV. We could park right in front of One Police Plaza, and John and I could put on a hell of a podcast. We're not going anywhere. That's the bottom line, and we're not going to back down. Death before dishonor. Kaz Daughtry is actually reported as the actual reporter shutting down our account. So, Kaz Daughtry, it's either you that has a problem with this podcast, and that's coming from a government account, which you shouldn't be trying to shut down someone's First Amendment speech when you took an oath as a deputy commissioner of operations, as a law enforcer for the NYPD. You took an oath, or someone is using your identity and posing as yourself, and I would find that quite concerning. You should definitely look into that, Kaz Daughtry. You should look into that, Juju, and find out who's using your information to suppress the First Amendment speech. You're not just... If this goes far beyond, this is the bigger picture. You don't even realize. And believe me, we have no problem going into a courtroom and suing every one of you. And believe me, it's coming. And you want to button up to, and you want to have Bootlicker button up to you. As far as I'm concerned, he's the real deputy commissioner of public information for the NYPD, or Levy from Viral News. He's buttoned up to the police department. Are you paying him? Is he paying you? Because he gets full access to these illegal military age males, these shelters that no one else gets. And as far as I'm concerned, it appears to be misinformation that Viral News is reporting that the police department cannot get access into migrant shelters to conduct domestic violence visits, to do follow-ups on potential victims of domestic violence. That sounds very strange to me, because if the police department is allowing that, that's an epic fail on potential victims that are home and that are victims of domestic violence. And I've seen victims of domestic violence that were not properly tended to and get the proper assessment and follow-up from the police department lose their lives. I saw it many times. One in particular, we had a woman that was a victim of domestic violence. The proper follow-ups were not conducted, and she was killed in the 10th precinct in housing in Chelsea. Went back when I was an anti-crime sergeant on the Lower East Side. So are we reporting misinformation? We got to keep our fingers on this. And that's the bottom line. We're not going anywhere. If I have to drive my RV in front of One Police Plaza and do a podcast from there, no problem. I'll park it right there. You can issue me parking summonses. No problem. John, we'll put a hell of a podcast on. We'll get the information out there. We won't stop. The show goes on. You can shut us down at any. The show goes on. But I just hope you can put on a hell of a deposition. I hope you could articulate how you spend 8 hours a day under a fake moniker on job time, how you are associated with known criminals that have been arrested, that are doing investigative journalism, that potentially could put out misinformation. This has to all come together. We're not going anywhere. We didn't go anywhere before. We're not going anywhere now. John, let's get into it, brother.
Yeah, so this is the first post that gets flagged for copyright. So this is a picture from the NYPD News' official account, from Kaz Daughtry's official New York City account. And Kaz Daughtry is a public official. He's not only a public official, he's a public figure, like myself and Eric. So you're allowed to use photos from the official NYPD News account. So I took the picture that he posted and I reposted it and said, I think it's pretty obvious who New York City Mayor Eric Adams wants to replace interim police commissioner Tom Sullivan with, right? Clearly, you see Kaz Daughtry sitting at the head of the table wearing a vest that has commissioner written on it. It doesn't have deputy commissioner written on it. It has commissioner written on it. He's sitting there. John Shell looks perturbed. It could just be the photo. But, in good sense and in good fashion, we consistently make memes. And this was the meme that we put. We put our logo with all the places that we're up on. We are actually up on Rumble as well. We're live on Rumble right now as well. We got to add that to the thing as well. But it has all our handles. We put the party department logo up in the left. Here's John Shell's face. We zoom in on John Shell's face and we said, damn it, this is going to become a meme, right? And then what happens? All of our accounts on Instagram and on X become locked, and we get all this stuff. And what does it say? So it says that we were reported by a third party. Your post goes against guidelines. Your post may go against guidelines. When I went to appeal, it wouldn't let me appeal. So when I went back a few hours later to appeal again, it was gone. But it doesn't matter. The harm's already there. Like, they're just continuously reporting the accounts. So, okay. Who did that? Who was it? So I look further into it. Who is it? Email the reporter. You could email the reporter. You need to include the report number. Explain to the reporter why you think your content does not use their intellectual property in an unlawful way. Tell them that if they agree with you, they should follow the instructions in the email we sent them after they reported your content. If the reporter contacts us, we'll put your photo back up. So this is insane. So an anonymous person could just report you and say whatever the hell they want and get your account taken down, which is insane to me. But this actually doesn't come from an anonymous person. It says copy reporter name, Kaz Daughtry. Send an email, kaz.daughtry@outlook.com. So a public official, it's either a public official who's also a public figure, is claiming that a photo on a public account of including other public officials is copyrighted information and can't be used by the public, which could not be further from the truth. So, of course, we have to get to the bottom of this. I don't have the means anymore because I'm not a police officer anymore, and Eric's not a police officer anymore. We don't have the means to look into where the IP address came. So we had to reach out to the Internal Affairs Bureau to let them know that either Kaz Daughtry is further targeting this podcast and trying to take us down and suppress our First Amendment right, and also continue to further to harm us financially, or someone's committing a very serious crime, a federal crime, and they're pretending to be somebody they are not and frivolously reporting our accounts. But they're using the name of the operational police commissioner of the NYPD, who, in my opinion, is more than likely going to be the official police commissioner of the NYPD if Eric Adams has his way. So, yeah, I mean, that's where we're at now. And it's so crazy. I mean, it's so crazy what's going on that not only are we seeing it, but people who really aren't too friendly to us, especially don't like me, are talking about it. And they're saying all the same things. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you look here. This is Talia Jane. Talia Jane is a reporter. Me and Talia Jane have had numerous spouts online about various different issues. Politically, we are opposite ends of the spectrum. When we look at a situation, we are at complete opposite ends of the spectrum. But here's Talia Jane retweeting what I retweeted. And she said, is NYPD Daughtry submitting a mass copyright complaints on an Instagram account of someone beefing with his best bud, Oren Levy, /Viral News New York City, in an effort to get said account suspended? Or is someone impersonating Daughtry to submit fraudulent copyright violations, which is a federal crime? I wonder who has a history of submitting fraudulent copyright complaints in an effort to harass and get an account he dislikes suspended. And then she reposts something from September 30th. Someone got big mad. I screenshot a tweet making outlandish claims with the video he didn't take, made false claims in his DMCA, and then check boxes that he should not have checked. So a far-right propagandist posted a video from his brother, who is not press, of a man fixing a car parked by an auto repair shop, making an outlandish claim that the man is a migrant working on a brand new vehicle that he owns. It's hilarious to me, as someone who has read the fair use doctrine a gazillion times, that claiming in a DMC content was altered removes it falling under fair use. Just amazing. So she's making the claim here as well. She believes that it's viral news as well because he has a history of doing these things. So yeah, that's where we're at. So yes, we're up on Rumble. We're live on Rumble at the Finest Cast. So if you guys could just do us a favor, and I know most people utilize YouTube and X, and obviously those are the go-to for most people. We're not telling you to not utilize them. We're just saying, just in case we're taken down and you don't see us one morning, go check our Rumble, because that's kind of what's happening. Or our X accounts just disappear and our Instagram accounts just disappear because we are being mass reported by New York City officials and by a fake journalist, Little Skell, who has sucked up to them beyond belief.
So Kaz Daughtry, his response is going to be the telltale to really what's going on. If Kaz Daughtry sits idle and does not respond, then we should take it as face value and say that it's Kaz Daughtry himself that's actually misreporting our accounts and trying to shut us down. And what Kaz Daughtry, what you don't understand is you're not trying to just shut us down personally. You're trying to shut down our business. You're trying to shut down our livelihood. You're trying to shut down the money that goes from our hands to our kids' mouths. Now, that I got a problem with. You're not going to stop us. We're going to continue. Now, if you do respond, because we did make this claim to Internal Affairs, and we know from Stephen Lee, who's a friend to this podcast that Internal Affairs cannot keep anything secret. No one in the NYPD is going to the CIA anytime soon. That you will be provided with this information so we could say it publicly. So, Kaz Daughtry, this is an opportunity for you to protect yourself and utilize your power and your ability to have authority in the New York City Police Department. Utilize those resources that you have. You have an 86 or 87 manpower of social media unit under the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, the former Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, Therese Shepard, who's now Chief of Staff. You have an 86 or 87 SUMARD personnel. Utilize that to find out who is committing a federal crime. Now, I hope, Viral News, I hope it's not you. I mean, we need you out there reporting the crisis that's going on with the illegal military age males. I'd hate to see you get arrested for a federal crime. I hope it's not you. I think you're smart enough for it not to be you, but everyone's pointing in your direction. John and I were both cops for a long time, and so are friends and listeners, and you are definitely a suspect number one. But if you're not, then Kaz Daughtry, you're responsible. So Kaz Daughtry, you got to take action immediately. And you should notify Internal Affairs yourself, Kaz Daughtry. I advise you to notify Internal Affairs yourself that you are the subject of this complaint, and you publicly know it as we're expressing it here on this podcast. And if not, well, I tell you what, you will be sued and you will be deposed upon this, how you're trying to shut down John and myself personally and shut down our business. This is a media company, whether you like it or not. This is our First Amendment right, and we're not going anywhere. You swore an oath to the Constitution. You did not swear omerta. So again, John, we're not going to back down. They know that. Everything has applied, but we do not know what they're capable of. And I don't trust anything within the police department, the upper management at this time. There's a fake moniker out there known as All Cops Are Woke that threaten the lives of our children, who we still not know the identity, but you know the identity. So maybe it's you also. Kaz Daughtry, you're known for lying before. You pled guilty. We know that you lack integrity. Do you lack integrity this time? What are you going to do? Are you going to have an epiphany? Is this the time that you're actually going to have a conscience? Are you going to notify Richard Galvez at Internal Affairs that you're aware that you've been a subject of a frivolously reporting this account? You should notify Internal Affairs. That's your duty. If you do not notify Internal Affairs, you should be subjected to the same punishment that Stephen Lee, former sergeant of the New York City Police Department, received in his department charges. But again, rules for thee and not for me. Do those rules apply to you, Kaz Daughtry? Kaz Daughtry is the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information. Deputy Commissioner of Operations. If anyone is not sure who watches this podcast, if you're a new listener to this podcast, he's the Deputy Commissioner of Operations for New York City Police Department, who has reported our accounts frivolously for copyright infringement. You don't even know what copyright infringement is, but we will continue. The show goes on. We're not going anywhere, brother. Annette, thank you so much. I appreciate it. John, read this out. This was a fantastic information that you uncovered. This is real work of a historian here. So let's disclose this information. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, before we do, I want to give a couple of shout outs. So Tom says, I would love to know if he has an encrypted radio. I'm going to say not only does he have an encrypted radio, but he's getting tipped off on every big crime that's happening. That's why he's able to report on every crime that's happening, every major newsworthy incident. He knows almost immediately. He's not getting tipped off by sources in the NYPD. He's being tipped off by the top of the NYPD. He's being tipped off by Kaz Daughtry and John Shell themselves. And that's why he's such a little sycophant. He completely ignores the corruption that's going on. He ignores the police brutality that happens from time to time when it involves the upper echelon. And he's never reported on any of the corruption whatsoever. He's actually apologized for it. He's become an apologist for public corruption. And it's funny, this was a dude that was he was an Antifa member. Then he was a BLM member. Then he sucked up to the freedom movement. Then he tried to get close to me and Eric. I mean, and if you just look at the guy's track record, literally anyone that he's ever been around or aligned himself with no longer stays around him or trust him. He's not a worthy person. But yeah, I'm sure he has a radio. I'm sure he gets a lot more than that. He's got a valid press pass, and I don't know why. So shout out to Tom $1.99 to the podcast. Eric, I don't know who you are, brother, but he just donated another 99 cents to the podcast. Appreciate you. And Snake Plissken, escaped from New York, peoples. I'll tell you what, if I was on a call I'd want you guys rolling in. $4.99 to the podcast. Thank you guys. So it's funny, timing's everything, right? We always say we don't believe in coincidence on this podcast. So I had put this post out, and almost immediately after I put this post out, account gets locked. So, like I said, I'm always reading, I'm always doing research, I'm always looking at stuff. I just been on the public corruption history in New York kick for a little while. I change. Sometimes it's mob history, sometimes it's sports history. Right now, I'm on the public corruption New York City history. So, I'm reading this the other day. I'm reading about Mike C. Murphy. He's known as the first New York City police commissioner. He's actually comes in after Roosevelt, who's also known as the first NYPD police commissioner. But the NYPD wasn't, I read out yesterday, NYPD wasn't formed until 1898. New York City's 5 boroughs wasn't actually formed until 1898. So prior to that, prior to the city charter, New York City had 18 different police departments. Okay, so once New York City's officially formed, Mike Murphy becomes the police commissioner. Robert Van Wyck is the mayor, right? So Mike Murphy, he's the police commissioner February 22nd to 1901 to January 1st, 1902. So I put this post out, and then almost immediately upon that, my account gets locked. So let's read through the post. So in 1901, the first NYPD police commissioner, Michael C. Murphy, issued an order directing 7,500 members of the uniformed force to purchase new brass buttons for their uniforms, under the guise that these buttons would help to distinguish officers from train conductors. The buttons later became known as Murphy buttons when it was discovered that Murphy was the co-owner of the patent of the button and made money on every button that was purchased. So when I read that, 511 cargo pants just popped in my head because I remembered an order when we heard old school. So I wrote, recently, the NYPD issued an order to 36,000 members, and I don't believe it's that number, but that's the number that John Shell claims. I believe it's way less than 36,000. I don't even think it's touching 30, even close to 30,000. But that's for another day. But let's say, they say it's 36,000, so I'll say it's 36,000. Recently, the NYPD issued an order to 36,000 member of the uniformed force, only authorizing a proprietary pair of cargo pants are to be worn in uniform. The one authorized pair of pants must be from the manufacturer 511. The claim is that the NYPD is going back old school, and this will help to improve appearance. This move bans the cargo pants officers have already purchased and have been wearing. Rank and file NYPD officers, as well as retirees, raise eyebrows at this move because it deviated from every other uniform item listed, where only materials, color, and style of uniform items are mandated and authorized, not a proprietary company. Unlike the Murphy buttons, which sold for 7 cents each, the cargo pants were at one time rumored to retail for $78. And they were at one time on the 511 website. And I had posted a link to that, and I had spoke about this previously a few months back. Since that time, 511 had removed them to be available for public purchase. As a result of this unusual order, rumors began to swirl that a retired member of the NYPD with close ties to the upper echelon of the NYPD had recently became a sales representative for 511, which sparked this order. As a result of this order, uniform shops across New York City are now left with inventory that was purchased to sell to members of the NYPD that is no longer authorized by the department. Below is a link to the 511 website where the item titled NYPD 511 Strike Pants is only explained. It's not even pictured, nor is it eligible for purchase. So it's gone. They removed it from their site, only an explanation of what the pants are. I provided the link. Although the appearance of impropriety is more than obvious, nothing nefarious has yet been uncovered, unlike the Murphy buttons. So for now, I think we should hold off on giving these pants a nickname. The Finest Unfiltered Crumbs Graft. So, Eric, what are you thinking when you see this?
So you and I had gotten some credible information. John and I have an excellent source that goes back to April of 2024. So we got a credible source, and we spoke to someone that said, take a look at these proprietary pants that have now been ordered and administered by the New York City Police Department under John Schell, and that the sales rep of 511, who is a sergeant, worked at the equipment section with the New York Police Department. Now that to me raises a red flag. So a sergeant that worked at the equipment section, who is now retired, who's familiar with the equipment section process, is a sales rep for 511. And then 511 is now the proprietary uniform required and mandated by the New York City Police Department under the authority of John Schell. At the same token, I mean, how ridiculous is that you do this to businesses throughout New York City right now, police businesses that have uniforms that now have money sitting on a shelf. And I say that's what you refer to it. If you have a restaurant, you have a bar, and there's bottles sitting on the shelf that have not been sold yet, or you have a store of clothing or a car shop with cars. Until that stuff is sold, it's called money on a shelf. So now there are NYPD authorized police stores in New York City that are stuck with authorized retailed uniform items that cannot be sold because they are not the proprietary item from 511 that is authorized by the New York City Police Department, and they're stuck with a substantial amount of inventory that they can't sell, and that is money on a shelf. This smells to high heaven, and this should be investigated immediately by the Internal Affairs Bureau. But will they? We know they won't, because this has to deal with the upper echelon of the police department. So apparently the Internal Affairs Bureau was more effective back when we had the first police commissioner than it is right now, in complete opposition to what we see. It's actually more nefarious right now. We see more protection of the upper management than we see in the when the commencement of the New York City Police Department in 1898, again, or 1901. This is absolutely insane. This should be looked in. It doesn't appear to be right. It smells to high heaven.
Oh, so I was actually wrong. They must have put it back up today. So that link now actually goes to those pants. Those pants are not listed at $78. They're listed at $80. So it's an $80 pair of pants. So let's just do the math real quick. Where's my calculator? I failed math, people, so please forgive me. Wasn't always the best student, you know. My teachers liked me, but I wasn't the.
I hope the union's paying attention to this. I know they're busy packing courtrooms, but if you
so
have a chance,
$80 times 36,000, right? 36,000. 80 times 36,000. 2,880,000. That is if one member of the service, each for one of the 30s, just only buys one pair of pants. We know that police officers work numerous times, so they're probably going to buy at least 3, potentially could buy 3 a year. So let's times that by 3. $8,640,000. So if every member of the service buys 3 pairs of pants, $8,640,000 a year. So, well, we all know it was wrong for Police Commissioner Murphy. I think when somebody looks into this, they're going to see how wrong it truly is. Never mind, they're harming the pockets of their own members. The unions are completely silent about this. Such cowardly men are. Such cowards they are. And still have not endorsed anyone for president, even though the Detective Endowment Association did do a poll where it is rumored that 95% of their members want them to endorse and support Donald Trump. But yet they're pretending like that poll never happened and we're out of their mind. They were just going to get a feeler. So each of their members are going to spend upwards of $200 to buy pants to wear on their uniform. The uniform items they had already purchased, they probably spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on previously. Those are all garbage and junk. The people who have any issues complying with this, maybe because they can't afford the pair of pants or whatever, will be docked vacation days, which will also help the city to save money. And yeah, I'd be hard pressed to think that there wasn't some backdoor deal here. I'd be very hard pressed to believe that there's not some backdoor deal. I mean, literally everything that's happened out of this administration has the appearance of being a grift, has been the appearance of taking public goods and giving it for private or personal gain. So I don't see why we should look at this any differently. And I don't know that this is even legal. I think that if you were to do this, this would had to have went through a bid process. Don't quote me on this, but I believe if they were going to tell you an authorized uniform item that you're required to wear, well, actually, this is optional. It's optional for you to wear cargo pants, so it's not required. But I still believe that it would have to go through a bid process. And because it's not required, they don't have to purchase it for you. But if it was a required item like pants, because you are required to wear pants, then they would have had to purchase it for you as well. But I still do believe this would have had to go through a bid. Traditionally, when we talk about uniform items, ties, gloves, hats, shirts, pants, jackets, whatever it is, it's never, not in my entire career, has ever a company been listed proprietarily. Never. It's literally a makeup of what the item should look like, what color the item should be, and what material should be utilized, and any other specifications so that any retailer could make that exact item and sell it. So if this doesn't raise your eyebrows, if nobody thinks that this is wrong, we have no more detectives in New York City. We don't have the greatest detectives in the world. We don't have an Internal Affairs Bureau. We don't have a New York City Council to provide oversight. We don't have a Department of Investigations. We don't have anything. If this isn't looked into, this is everything that's wrong with New York City. We haven't learned one thing from the first police commissioner who's corrupt. We're exactly where we were in 1901, a corrupt, lost city who does not follow the rules. They only enforce them on people that just don't know any better or don't have any political clout.
Well, that's why I say right now it's more nefarious now than it was back then. We went full circle, right? That's the whole point, right? I was a history major in college. As a historian, you're supposed to learn from the past. So the version of the New York City Police Department should be far better and 1,000 light years ahead of what we had in 1901. So I just did the math because I'm really into business. And when I watch Shark Tank, any friends and listeners watch Shark Tank? I love Shark Tank, one of my favorite shows. I'm really into business. And the average royalty fee that a business gets on a proprietary item is 2% when it comes to royalty fees. If anybody knows what a royalty fee is if I have goods and they're being sold, for every time that good is sold, my business would get 2% cut because I contributed to that business. So if there's a $100 pair of pants being sold, rhetorically speaking, the person that helped that business get started would get $2 for every pair of pants. So I just did the math. If someone was behind this getting a kickback, or let's say they're getting a royalty fee of 2%, if there's 36,000 pants being sold, and if each cop gets 2 pairs of pants and the royalty fee is at 2%, then just for getting this going, I would get $115,200. $115,000 as a 2% royalty fee, and I'm sure the royalty fee would be much higher just on 2 pairs of pants. Now, John, you had mentioned 4 pairs of pants. So if I change that number at 4 pairs of pants, and you're right, because they are going to buy 4 pairs, maybe even more, that's almost $500,000. That's also $500,000 on a royalty fee. If this is not looked into, then we can say clearly that John and I have proved that the Internal Affairs Bureau is not meant to investigate corruption. It's actually meant to deflect corruption from the upper management by beating into submission the rank and file of this job, given the appearance that Internal Affairs actually investigates corruption. And if this doesn't stink to high heaven, if this doesn't have the appearance for impropriety, then what else can we say at this point? We have to be honest and show the appearance of impropriety. This has come full circle. This is far more nefarious and has a far more negative light than what we see happening in 1901. We have to keep our finger on this. So, John, keep that in mind. If there's a 2% royalty fee for 36,000 cops, and based on 4 pairs of pants for each cop, that's $460,800. It's almost $500,000 to be made. That is substantial. That's just on pants.
I don't know what the kickback is, but like someone said it on here, New York City's kickback city, and there is a kickback. I don't know what it is. All I know is there's a lot of money, and when there's a lot of money, that's the value of that kickback goes up, right? Now, again, are these people smart? No, they're not. They're not. I don't credit them with being great businessmen or anything, but that there is something very nefarious happening there, in my opinion. And unless I'm proven otherwise, but unless I'm proven otherwise, I won't change that opinion. But I think it's something that we should look into. I think it's something that should be looked into because it's absolutely wrong. So, all right, let's get into where we up on the screen. Okay. Let's get into the Evolve gun scanners. We talked about the Penny situation. We talked about the corruption that's flourishing across New York City. We talked about the censorship, their new public information model, which is they're just going to try to shut down all of their critics. So now let's get on to these Evolve, and then we'll go enjoy our Friday and the rest of the weekend and hang out with our families and friends. And, hopefully eat good, work out, and do all the fun stuff. Get some sunlight. So the Evolve gun scanners, the pilot has ended. Pilot was for a month. It has ended. I think myself and Eric told you exactly how that pilot was going to work out. I don't think it's because we're geniuses. I don't think it's because we know anything that no one else knows. I think it's because it was damn obvious that this thing was going to be a huge, glaring failure. And what a shocker. Just like the subway robot, just like the drones, it was a huge, glaring failure. And another one of Kaz Daughtry's technology. Another one of Eric Adams bringing us into the future, right? Another. Oh, and by the way, I was just in Staten Island and I got my new garbage can, and it's so revolutionary. It has a top on it, and you open it up and you throw garbage in it and you close it. So the trash revolution's here, the technology revolution's here. They're all huge, glaring failures. And by the way, the garbage can's way too small and it sucks. I like the one I bought from the Home Depot much better.
Did a drone come and open the garbage can for you, or you had to open it yourself? You actually
no, that's Kaz Daughtry's working on it.
I hope so.
He's working.
I hope so, because it's a shame if you have to open it yourself.
Yeah, they need to be able. He's gonna have the drone come to my garbage can to take my garbage so that they could sift through it to see where I eat or where bills I paid, all that stuff.
But listen, here we go again. Here's another thing that this podcast predicted would be an epic fail. We saw robots go up. We saw robots go down. We see gun detection scanners go up, and we see them go down. Epic fail. Epic fail. I said the only place that this gun detection scanner should be in is at the migrant shelter. It should be at the Roosevelt Hotel, where we have a robbery pattern going on right now of juvenile males at 42nd Street, the Little Devils. We could shut this thing down in a week. We'd have choke points. We'd have cops at 42nd Street. We'd have cops. First of all, we would have anti-crime flooding that area, and they would be located at the migrant shelter. They would be located in and around 42nd Street. We'd have a gun detection scanner there that could detect guns, detect knives, and this thing would be shut down in less than a week. But no, we want to pretend that this gun detection scanner was the solution for transit. There's absolutely no solution. There's no plan in transit. Michael Kemper has retired. We have a new transit chief. That's why I had put out on Twitter, What is going to be your plan? Because omnipresence is not a plan. It's not going to sustain forever. What is going to be your plan? You're going to have the same thing? Are you going to have another private contract? Are you going to have some other form of technology in the subway system that's completely useless and have a full press conference? That's what I predict. Here is another epic fail by the police department. John, let's read the article.
Yeah, it's completely failure upon failure. So the results are in. Evolved gun scanners recover 0 guns in the subways. Going to have to agree with the Legal Aid Society here, which is a shocker. This is objectively a failure. Oh, wow, shocker. Wasn't because they went to college. The month-long pilot gun scanners in New York City subway system over the summer recorded 0 guns. The NYPD said this week after city and state wrote about their silence. 2 months after the pilot of evolved scanners was completed, and following multiple requests from city and state, the NYPD said in a brief statement that in 30 days and across 20 subway stations, the evolved pilot recovered 12 knives. They did not mention recovering any firearms. They also reported that out of 2,749 scans, there were 118 false positives. So before we go any further, Eric Adams' idea of public safety in the subway is doing absolutely nothing, keeping the subways filled with mentally ill, homeless drug addicts who are potentially a danger to you, themselves, and everyone around them. But his idea of public safety is we're going to pay millions of dollars, put these scanners in. You're going to have to give up your constitutional right to search and seizure in order to ride New York City subways. And basically, what's happened? There were more people. Not only did millions of people in New York City give up their constitutional right to their own body autonomy and to their personal well-being, that they had to walk through this scanner, but 118 of those millions were stopped and searched. 118 of those people were actually stopped and physically searched. So they were already searched with this technology that we don't know if it's going to cause cancer. We don't know if it has any effects on your body, on your skin, on the internals, on your blood, on anything. We have no idea, because no studies were done, what happens to you if you walk through that twice a day for 50 years. We don't know. There was no study done for that. So, but that's what New Yorkers have to do. They have to go through that. And 118 of those people not only had to submit to that, then they actually had to be stopped and physically searched. And they did absolutely nothing wrong. So, unbelievable.
Well, the other thing that we have to talk about, right, is the only people that actually walk through that gun detection scanner are obliging citizens in New York City. Because if you're a perpetrator, if you're an adversary, you're a person of interest, you're a subject in New York City, you're not utilizing that transit system. You're not utilizing that entrance and that exit. That's not the location that you go into. The only people's rights that were violated was good, obliging New York citizens or tourists that were getting on that subway to travel by commuting or get to the location for tourism. But it wasn't a location where perpetrators getting stopped. This is a complete farce. This is just an attack on a Fourth Amendment. It's surprising that anyone's actually behind this. We've had New York City in complete opposition of stop, question, possibly frisk, which is a targeted, intrusive police tool, the bedrock foundation of policing under broken windows to stop shootings, to stop violence in New York City. And yet, we didn't see the opposition for this gun detection scanner. And the only people that were affected by this gun detection scanner is the good people in New York City. VSS Venturas, thank you so much, brother. $10 to the podcast. I really appreciate it. He says, I've always been interested mob business and how rockets work. This is a rocket for sure. And the city's leadership is one big crime family. Also, check out Osprey Publishing for military books. I love military books. I'm definitely going to check out Osprey. I appreciate it. VSS Venturas, thank you so much for the donation of the podcast, as always. So, John, don't you think that it's good people that are actually walking through this gun detection scanner? I mean, to me, I don't think it's persons of interest. Who do you think is going through that scanner?
We already said we labeled it out last time. Nobody that's carrying a firearm or even a knife, and the people that the knives they recovered from were construction workers, because nobody that has any nefarious intention is walking through that scanner. They're just going to walk around it. They're going to go to a different train station. They're not going to utilize the train station that this scanner's in. But breaking news coming out of Chris Sommerfeld. You can't make this up, bro. You can't make this up. Like, you can't. We're talking about Evolve. Chris Sommerfeld of the Daily News just tweets a second ago. Breaking. Evolve, the company behind Adams Admin's controversial subway gun scanner program, is acknowledging that some of the employees have engaged in misconduct during business deals. An announcement that comes as the firm faces several federal and local probes. Story coming shortly. Oh, wow. So not only was it a huge, huge failure where it did absolutely nothing to provide public safety, it actually diminished public safety because it took away necessary funds that could be used for things to actually help with public safety in New York City. Now we're coming to find out that maybe this deal was pretty shady. Maybe there was a little corruption involved, like every other contract that happened in New York City under this administration. But hey, don't listen to us. Go listen to the Migrant Czar. Go listen to Bootlicker News. Follow him. He's going to show you. He's going to go on his crime tour where he plays the violin. He has the violin music in the back, and he shows you absolutely nothing. And he misrepresents what the photo is actually showing you. You should go follow him there for more breaking news. That didn't happen, Mo. That didn't happen. Didn't happen. Nah, bro. I know these people. Nah, bro. I was talking to Kaz. That's not what it is, Mo. They're good guys. They're like me and you. They're like me and you.
It's funny. Listen, I don't like giving Juju too much airtime, but it's funny, this statement that he's making. He says, Eric, focus on Roosevelt Hotel so much. That's how detached he is from New York City because the Watson Hotel is bigger. Well, if that's true that the Watson Hotel is bigger than the Roosevelt Hotel, that's embarrassing that you even made that statement. That it's at the point that there's something even far worse than Roosevelt Hotel, which is at the center of a robbery pattern. So I'd like to see what's going on with the Watson Hotel, what's in and around there also. But again, here's another private contract that has all the appearance of impropriety. You got breaking news. Is anyone surprised by this? Again, if we did not point out to you how it smells so bad in the appearance of those 511 proprietary pants, take a look at that quick, Internal Affairs. And if Internal Affairs doesn't take a look at it, we've answered your question. Can Internal Affairs investigate the police department properly? Sure, they can investigate the rank and file. They can investigate general population. They can uncover a police officer, the 7-5 precinct, sexualizing a 14-year-old girl because he's part of general population. But can they investigate the tan pants? Can they investigate the upper echelon of the police department that has ties to nepotism? We've answered that question. The answer is no. Here's another technological failure of the police department. Epic fail. Did this shut down right now because it's a failure? Or is it, again, John, what do I always say? I don't believe in coincidences. Is this going down right now because there's a correlation to the potential corruption with this private contract? I would say that's the appearance to me. I mean, it's not too hard to put two and two together, but here we are on a Friday discussing things we're not supposed to talk about, things that people actually see and they don't want to say. So let's speak the truth. Everything right now has the appearance of impropriety with this administration and everything in and around the police department. Again, I don't want to even hear about Internal Affairs. As far as I'm concerned, Internal Affairs needs a complete overhaul. They shouldn't be doing any investigations right now. Anything signed off by Internal Affairs is completely tainted under this administration. Everything. It should immediately stop. All investigations right now with Internal Affairs should cease at this moment.
Before I go further in the article, Joe Mango says, what do you think of Galata, Chief Galata? Chief Galata was just promoted from the chief of Staten Island to the chief of transit. So Chief Galata went through those processes. I was not a fan of his reactions to the small, peaceful protests that happened in Staten Island around the migrant shelter. I think he was heavy hand, but I think overall, I think Chief Galata's had a good career. I think I said, I don't think anyone's ever going to be perfect, including myself or Eric or you or anybody else. So I didn't like the way things were handled on Staten Island when it related to those protests. Thought you saw definitely two different style of policing when you would go to the out of control riots where streets and sidewalks and train stations and bus terminals were taken over, as opposed to in Staten Island where you had some elderly women who were protesting an all male migrant shelter in their neighborhood. I think that, there was like a completely zero tolerance style in Staten Island that happened. So I wasn't happy with Joe Galata's leadership during specifically about those things. I think also the crime on Staten Island's been through the roof. I'm not happy with the response from any of the precincts on Staten Island. I think if you look at the crime numbers over the last 4 years, they've increased dramatically. A lot's to blame on New York City Mayor Eric Adams and on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but not all of it. The way that they've been policing, the style that they've been policing, what they've been telling the community at community board meetings, how they've been reacting to 911 calls and what they've been telling complainants. I'm not a fan of it all. And that's why basically everyone I know, it's a very sad day when I go to Staten Island because literally every house I pass and every block I know, tons and tons of people, and they're all gone. They've all recently left in the last 4 years. And I don't just blame Eric Adams for that. So I'm like, again, I think this whole administration needs an overhaul. But as far as who should be the chief of transit, if I have to choose people that are in the department, I'm going to choose people like a lot of who are experienced and who have actually went through the processes in the New York City Police Department and have leadership experience and things of that nature. So what do you think, Eric?
So prior to this corruption probe, I would tell you that Galata is probably one of the favorite commanding officers around the city, well liked. Did have a pretty much an illustrious career for the most part. But what do we see right now? It's not about what you did before. It's about what you're doing in present. So present, he's another bum. Get him out. We need a complete overhaul right now. He's compromised and affected like everybody else. How could you police in the manner that you did in Staten Island while simultaneously you're watching riots in Union Square play out and they're using kick gloves? It's complete opposite. Again, I hear that we compartmentalize as chiefs. It's absolutely ridiculous. They all consort together and they should be coming up with the same plan. It should be the same vision. At no point did Chief Galata ever step up and say that he has a problem with this administration, that he has a problem with the bullying tactics, that he thinks it's completely unprofessional what's going on? He never stood up for a word. So you know what? Listen, he's the best right now of the worst administration that we have. Yes, he did go through those processes. But again, we're giving people way too much credit because the standard and the bar has been so low because of the appointments of Kaz Daughtry and Tariq Shepard. But right now, he's another bum in my eyes because it's not about what he did. It's about what he's doing right now. And at no point did he stand up and say, hey, why are we allowing the standard in Staten Island to be policed differently? Because I'm sure it wasn't his idea. I'm sure it came from above him that there would be a different set of standards for the residents of Staten Island than there would be in Union Square. Again, they're all New York City residents. It's not Staten Island residents and Manhattan residents. It's all under New York City. And it's all under the same umbrella. So, yes, he's the best of the worst. He did have a good career. I've heard great things about him. He had an illustrious career. But right now, in present day, he's a part of this administration. He never spoke up. So, honestly, I think he's affected and compromised also. But unfortunately, someone has to take that seat right now. I think that he's the best person to take the seat, but I'm sure things will play out and we'll find out. Is he willing to step up and deviate from these private contracts, or is he going to fall in line? And what it tells me, the fact that he was appointed tells me he's going to fall in line. That's my prediction.
Transit's going to be at or near historic lows if we just remove a few years of data. 100%. Nobody's moving up the ranks and getting that high. You're not making 3-star without towing the company narrative and crime is down. John Cook says, does the Tam Pants Brigade have to buy from 511? I have not even seen a uniform patrol guide for them at all. And what I see from them is they all have their own little unique variation of that uniform. I've seen more than several types of different tan pants that they wear, some 511, some different sneakers with that, different shirts, different undershirts, different vest carriers. So I don't know. I don't even think that they have a patrol guide authorized uniform. I could be wrong about that, but I haven't seen it. So if anybody has that, you want to send it to me, I could correct the record. But so let's get back to this article. Let's get back to the Evolve. So New York City Mayor Eric Adams has repeatedly indicated interest in gun detection tech. He always has interest in spending money. You notice that? It's always an interest in spending money and getting a contract. That interest culminated in March with a theatrical press conference in the Fulton Street subway station to announce the city would test it out. The month-long pilot of Evolve's technology, which resembles walk-through metal detectors, but claims to use advanced sensor technology and artificial intelligence. Oh, that reminds me of the drones, the autonomous drones, that there's zero autonomous about them. They can't park themselves. They don't fly themselves. They need a pilot. So to distinguish weapons from other items has faced backlash from privacy and civil liberty advocates. Responding to the brief report from the NYPD on the pilot's results, the Legal Aid Society called it a failed pilot. It's now abundantly clear why the administration delayed these figures. The organization said in a statement, not only did the Evolve scanners detect 0 firearms, but they triggered 118 false alarms, compromising the safety of subway riders. This is an objective failure, no matter how hard City Hall tries to spin this data. The NYPD did not comment further on the pilot, but said earlier this month that it had not entered into any contract with Evolve. The NYPD has said that they didn't pay for the 30-day pilot. The Daily News reported earlier this month that New York City Department of Investigation is probing the Adams administration and how it acquired the Evolve pilot. The company has come under scrutiny from federal regulators and lawsuits, including over allegations that has made misleading statements about what the technology can actually do. So, again, what are we seeing here? We're seeing lies upon lies. Why does the city care to hold back the data of the pilot? Why would they hold back the data? They're holding back the data because, again, they want perception management. They want to enter into this contract, obviously. That's why they're not releasing the data. But why do they want to enter into that contract is the question. It failed. Should New York City taxpayers now go ahead? But I think when Eric Adams talks, he's going to tell you what a success it is. He's going to point to the subway crime numbers. Kaz Daughtry is going to point to the subway crime numbers. The new chief of transit, Galata, is going to point to the subway crime numbers. And they're going to tell you they're down. They're down for a 48-hour window. And if you just remove all of the other days ever in history, we're actually at or near historic lows. And we should 100% spend millions and millions of dollars on these gun detecting scanners. That failed. Because it was great, because like Eric Adams would say, when we had a mass shooting during the West Indian Day Parade on the parade route where there were hundreds of cops stationed at the time and 5 people were shot right in front of him, he's going to say everything went according to plan. Hats off to the team. Get stuff done.
You know what he's going to tell you? He's going to tell you the same thing they said in West Indian Parade. There was only one nut. And in this, there was no nuts that made it through these gun detection scans. That's what he's going to tell you. What he's going to tell you is change your perception and fight the truth by telling you that these gun detection scanners actually did deflect firearms going onto the subway, that the people that got the false alarms didn't have a weapon on them. So it was a deterrent. That's what he's going to tell you. He's going to lie and gaslight the public by saying that this gun detection scanner was a success because it was a deterrent for violent perpetrators to carry illegal firearms and other forms of weapons onto the subway. That's my prediction. Also, you actually solidified what I was saying earlier, John, when you said that it's not going to change with Galata when it comes to transit with crime. So actually what he's going to toe the same line. There's no doubt about it. For him to move up in this administration, he's going to toe the line. It also goes to, unfortunately, we have to ask these questions. I don't want to completely deviate, but since we're talking about chiefs and someone asked a question about Galata, it goes into questions that we have to ask. So we have the first female chief that's going to be the now borough commander of Staten Island. She's going to be in charge. Her name is Chief Egger. So we had to ask the question. I don't have any familiarity with her, but I had to ask the question. Did she earn and deserve this position, or is this a DEI appointment? And I don't know how, but we have to ask those questions because here is the first female. Now, I actually received credible information that she earned her way up, to get to this billet and get this position. So that's nice to hear. That's a pleasure to hear. But unfortunately, because of the image painted by Eric Adams with this administration, this whole DEI, and the first of many and the first of any, we have to ask those questions. So again, I think that Galata is going to toe the line. I don't think we'll see a change in transit. I think we'll see more perception. We'll see more fighting of the truth. We'll see an extension of what was happening with Michael Kemper when it was cherry picking when it comes to what years in policing that they're willing to document and actually utilize to show crime numbers. We're going to see much of the same. I don't think we'll see any difference. If not, Galata will have to find himself another position and another job if he wants to stay with this administration. As long as Eric Adams is the mayor and Kaz Daughtry is in charge of operations as the actual police commissioner, he will have to toe the line, and we will see absolutely no change. It's going to be the same horse, just a different color.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you're not moving up if you're not towing the company line. But like I said, I think with Galata and with Chief Eager, I think they both earned their way up the ranks. They went through the processes. They were captains, they were sergeants, they were lieutenants, they were captains, they were deputy inspectors, they were inspectors, they were chiefs. They weren't promoted with rocket fuel like others. They just weren't. They have all commanded numerous things. I think that was some of the first, and then when I looked at the discretionary promotions too, I also saw a lot of people that probably should have been promoted a long time ago. Again, I think we're going to go right back to friends of Eric Adams being promoted all over the place. I just think that was a throw your bone, make it look like Donlan's actually doing something. Honestly, like I'm looking forward to having him not being the police commissioner anymore, because it's he's done absolutely nothing. He's going to have zero impact. He's just towing the line, and that's I think that one thing we missed yesterday before we get off, we're 2 hours in, but real quick, there was one thing that we missed yesterday, was that we spoke about Tariq Shepard being the deputy commissioner of public information. We spoke that in April 23, he was a captain. Then he gets promoted to deputy inspector. Then he becomes deputy commissioner of public information. He does absolutely horrible at that. He does nothing but lie to the press every day and to the public every day. He's made numerous lies. He slandered people. He cursed at people. He'd proven himself to not be a professional, not be a consummate professional, to be clumsy, even though he had worked in the press office his entirety of his career. So he proved how clumsy he is. But then under Donnellan, he now becomes the chief of staff, and he just overnight, no one even knows about it, he's put in uniform to a 3-star chief. So April 23, he's a captain. Fast forward now, October 24, he's a 3-star chief of staff. The thing I think we missed, why do you think that is? What do you think about that? Like if you had to guess, like, what do you think the reasoning he was the chief of staff? He was made chief of staff.
Well, I think right now, because exactly that, Tom Donnellan is actually the most insignificant police commissioner, and it's obvious that Kaz Daughtry and along with Tariq Shepard are running the complete operations of the police department. And this whole complete yo-yo of uniform to civilian back to uniform, it's obvious they're running the operations of the police department, which is exactly that. And it's not Tom Donnellan. Tom Donnellan is exactly what you said. You used the term placeholder. I agree. These guys were promoted by rocket fuel. They're there because they are the hand to the king. They are there. They're doing exactly what Eric Adams wants, and that's Kaz Daughtry and Tariq Shepard. And that's exactly. I think this was a complete calculated move. I'm actually impressed that this information wasn't leaked out, that it happened in this manner. I'm really surprised that we didn't hear much grumbling about it. We heard some stuff. We did get some credible sources that this was going to happen before, but for the most part, we didn't even see any write-ups. It wasn't much public information on it, but I think it's because they're close to the king, and obviously they're running complete operations for the New York City Police Department. It's obvious. What do you think about that?
I think, I look at it two ways. I say either there's going to be a change in the guard real soon, and they needed a uniform member to stay in the rank of chief, so it doesn't make Eric Adams look like a complete bumbling fool when almost the entirety of the upper echelon of the NYPD also is changed, notably Chief John Shell and Chief Madry. When they officially put their papers in and retire, I know they're both working on the 3/4. I don't know how they're working on the 3/4, like just shoving their food in their mouth. But I know I know they will leave with 3/4, or they will retire and then get 3/4 later, like every other chief does. So that's, I know that's coming. That's only a matter of time. So that post I had put out a while back was dead accurate. So they will be retiring shortly. So I know that's coming. So then I think, well, is it because now Tariq Shepard's going to take one of those spots, which, by the way, he's completely unqualified to have taken. I think it's a joke that he even has 3 stars on his shoulder, that people have to listen to this person who's never done a stitch of police work. But so it's either that, and they're just going to keep the familiarity and then move him into one of these top spots, or they're moving him back because he's close to 20 years. And then as soon as he hits his 20 years, he's going to retire as a uniform member of service and hit the door. So I'm not sure what it is. I don't know. I'm leaning with Eric Adams thinks he's fine and he's not going anywhere because Kathy Hochul told him she's not going to remove him. I'm leaning with that he will possibly be the chief of department and Kaz Daughtry will be the police commissioner. That's what I'm leaning with, but it could be he's setting up to make a run. I haven't really weighed it out, but I lean that way. That's what I think. Those are what I see.
Well, Eric Adams doesn't do anything for anyone, even the people in his circle of nepotism. He doesn't do it for their benefit. He does it for his own benefit. So to Kaz Daughtry and Tariq Shepard, he didn't promote you by rocket fuel because he did it for you. He did it for him. Incidentally, it is a benefit for you. So I don't see it as an opportunity for Tariq Shepard to head for the door. I think the plausibility, what we've been saying, is that it's because they're now running the operations of the police department. I definitely think that's what it's about. Kaz Daughtry will, in my opinion, will stay in the civilian side of it. I don't think he'll be actually appointed as the police commissioner. I think he might be appointed as the first deputy commissioner. I think the police commissioner will still be another placeholder, will be another face. I do think Kaz Daughtry will be in charge of all the operations. As far as Tariq Shepard goes, it would be a great move for Eric Adams to keep him on the uniform side of things, right? Again, he has his 2 henchmen alongside him. On one side, he covers the civilian side by having Kaz Daughtry at the top of the operations and put Tariq Shepard in charge. Could be chief of patrol, could be chief of department. It would make sense to put him as chief of department or chief of patrol, which is definitely indicative of John Shell leaving the department sometime soon. So again, he's also, we know, could it be an opportunity to hook him up, right? I mean, you and I talked about this on a prior podcast, that he goes to the appearances with Eric Adams. He's been traveling around with him. So maybe that's the reason. So Ron Layson just made a good point. Didn't he get in the January 4 class? Absolutely. He came out with myself in January 2004. So he already hit that 20-year mark. So I do think great point, Ron Layson. I do think that it is to keep him at the top of the upper echelon. You have Adams at the middle. To your left, you got Kaz Daughtry. And to your right, you have Tariq Shepard. And those two are going to run the department. Again, Kaz Daughtry, I predict maybe first deputy commissioner, have someone in place. And Tariq Shepard, one of these chief spots, absolutely. They'll be running the department. Those two are going to be the face of the NYPD.
Yeah, Kaz Daughtry is going to be the police commissioner, but I ultimately think Eric Adams isn't going to make it. So again, I think this is all going to come crumbling down. This is just a death spiral that's happening in New York City, and they're putting out there, everything's good. We're still in charge. We still got this.
But, you know what? Let's make a prediction now. So I say he makes it to January 1st. What date you got? Eric Adams.
You're taking a huge time frame. I say there's no way he's making it to January 1st. So
does he make it past Christmas?
No way he makes it to January 1st.
Well,
He's gone. He's gone.
so then you're saying so you're saying he's going to resign because I don't see Kathy Hochul removing him. I mean, you said it the other day. We talked about, right? She has more than 50% approval rating with Eric Adams in place. So why would she have to move him?
Why?
If she has
you're going to
Go ahead.
collapse the state and possibly the country.
True.
They have spent hundreds of billions of dollars frivolously in an effort to bolster private and their personal bank accounts. That's it. That's all this administration has done. So I'm like reading all of this history, and I'm like, and it was like ripe with corruption, and none of it that I read is as bad as it is now. None of it. I'm like, I was like, I would have thought it would have been so much worse. I would have thought, looking at the inception of this when you know, there was a different threshold for corruption back in the day. There were things that were just not looked at as corrupt back in the day. People were tougher. People had thicker skin. You know, cops were getting free things all over the place. Nobody looked at that as corrupt. There were favors everywhere. And I'm saying that it's worse today than it was then. And I'm like, I can't even believe it.
That I agree. I absolutely think that's why I say I think this is more nefarious of what's going on right now than what you talked about in 1901, because you're supposed to learn from the past. That's the whole point of history, right? So you learn from the past, you learn from the mistakes, and we went full circle. And it's actually worse now because we know better. We know better now. We have the tools to actually do better. We've evolved. We've become more intelligent, not because we're smarter than people back then, but because we've experienced and we've had our eyes on over 100 years of law enforcement to make assessments on. So I think the Internal Affairs Bureau needs a complete overhaul. I think all investigations right now with Internal Affairs should cease. I think they should be looked at by DOI at this time, and we do need the feds to look involved, and we need a complete overhaul of how we run internal affairs. And it takes people like Stephen Lee and Adrian Schoolcraft and Serpico. We need people like that to really get together and discuss how we move forward with internal affairs so we do proper investigations. Absolutely. Yeah, but, you know, like I said, when it comes to Kathy Hochul, you know, like I said, she has over a 50% approval rating with Eric Adams there. I mean, that's pretty – her approval rating should just completely tanked. So that's really surprising. You know, and that's why I said I don't see how she has to move him. I mean, she doesn't care that it's completely crumbling. I mean, I speak to cops, sergeants, lieutenants on a daily basis, and they tell me this whole thing with state troopers right now, you know, in the 110 precinct on Roosevelt Avenue is a nightmare. That the state troopers there, no disrespect to them, but themselves being there is more of a burden than actually helping them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Eric Adams has done the worst job of any New York City mayor in history, including Bill de Blasio. He's going to resign. There will be a subsequent indictment coming down from his first investigation. He has 4 other ones to get through after that. He's the first indicted mayor in New York City history. He does not skate on all of these things. He's got a big problem. His political career is absolutely over. Like I said, I think there was a deal made to keep it up, to make it look like, oh, everything's fine. Democrats are doing great. I think that there was a deal to not interfere with the November election. He's done. I don't think it has anything to do with Kathy Hochul or not. She's a loser. Everyone that voted for her or Eric Adams or continues to support him is also a loser, in my opinion. So with that, I would say vote no on Prop 1 if you're in New York. If you're in Florida, vote no on Amendment 3 and 4. And let's get out there and vote for common sense, incorruptible people, unlike Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul. So check out our friend Tom Sullivan. We appreciate you for joining us. We'll be back Monday live 8:05. Eric, you got anything before we go?
Absolutely. Listen, everybody, enjoy your weekend. You know, shout out to our friends that listen to the podcast. We'll be back Monday as always. And as John said, this fight is we're not going to stand down. No matter what it takes, this podcast will go on. The show goes on. No matter what pressure is going to be put upon us from the police department, we will prevail. I promise you that. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. See you Monday.
Tom Sullivan is the Republican, Conservative, and Common Sense Party candidate for New York State Assembly District 23. Tom is a financial professional who served simultaneously in the United States Army Reserve for 30 years and has now retired. His district covers Ozone Park, Lindenwold, Howard Beach, Broad Channel, and the Rockaway Peninsula.
Come November, I would empower our law enforcement agencies to go out there and do their job and not put them or their families or their pensions at risk for doing their jobs. We need drastic change in Albany so that we have a say in this matter, and they realize people of New York State will hold them accountable.
The Sullivan family has a legacy of service. Tom served for 30 years protecting and defending the rights of others. Come this November, he has earned your support. This advertisement's paid for by the Friends of Tom Sullivan.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.